This 2023 AFC North season-long player props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by our Patreon. Score exclusive perks, content, and contests, including our NFL win totals contest with a $1,000 prize. Join today at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is offering you a chance to win $15 million in prizes with Best Ball Mania 4. Use promo code SGPN at Underdog Fantasy for a 100% deposit bonus of up to $100. And we're also brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the app now and use promo code SGP. New customers can score $200 in bonus bets instantly when they bet just $5 on any college football bet, only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code SGP. Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Wednesday, August the 30th, currently 1:05 on the East Coast, and we are at the finish line for our season-long player props. The last division, I think arguably, at least in my eyes, probably the best division in football going into this year, just because this division is going to be very, very competitive. Rod's already making a face at me, but we'll get his thoughts here in a minute. But yeah, last episode here, at least for our season-long player props, like I mentioned, 7 down. The AFC North is left, and we are going to tackle those player props here today. But joining me, you guys know him as the voice on the NASCAR Gambling Podcast, F1 Gambling Podcast, of course, here on the Propcast, and on the NFL Gambling Podcast as well. It's Rod Villagomez. Rod, why are you making faces at me, sir? We're only in August, and you're already making faces at me.
It's only 10 o'clock in the morning, and I woke up and chose violence. I mean, listen, I get it. This is going to be a competitive. That's probably the one takeaway that you can go. This will be probably the most competitive out of all of them, because all the teams outside of maybe Baltimore have something and very, very close. But there's still a lot better teams out there. I don't know if this is the best team or best division in the league, but it certainly will be the most competitive. I'll give you that, Munaf.
Okay, most competitive. We'll meet in the middle and call it the most competitive. Rod woke up and chose violence this morning. Chris, we were talking offline, was not in a very good mood this morning either. But guys, it's a brand new day. It's hump day. Chris, how you feeling this morning, my man?
What's up, What's up, Rod? Excited to be here with you guys as always, man. It's exciting to be able to go through these player props with you guys. I know we had a lot of alignment, so it's gonna be interesting to see what a coin flips or what a ball lands today. Excited to chop it up with you guys, and every time we do one of these shows, if we kind of talk about it, we're getting closer and closer to the regular season. So it's exciting to be able to kind of put all this in play and be down to last division. So let's jump into it, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, man, we're a little over a week away from the first game of the 2023 NFL season. Again, I think this is the time that everybody's been waiting for. It's like kids waiting for Christmas, at least for football fans like we all are here, football junkies on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Shout out to the chat. The producer of the Golf Gambling Podcast, Cameron Kerr, is in there. And shout out to Cam as well. He does all of our YouTube thumbnails, at least for the pods that I'm on. The NBA pod, the NFL pod, the Propcast, and which one did I forget? I forgot one of the pods. But yeah, shout out to Cam for all the hard work that he puts in. He's here. He's here to patrol that we're not slandering the Steelers. He's a huge Steelers fan. So just be mindful of what you guys say about the Steelers here today on this episode. But yeah, like we talked about it, guys, I think this is the most competitive division, at least. And again, this division doesn't have a single it has one team, I believe, that does have a win total above 10. And I think that is the Cincinnati Bengals. But they are dealing with their starting quarterback, Joe Burrow, with a calf injury. Don't know what the status exactly is for Joe Burrow for week 1 from the looks of it. And the things that I've read it, that it seems like it's only a grade 1 calf strain, but it could be a lingering thing during the regular season if he does come back too fast. But that's something we'll keep an eye on as we talk about player props, not only for today, but also when we talk about our weekly player props for the NFL season. So let's dive right into it, gentlemen. AFC North. Chris, why don't you lead us off tonight with your first player prop?
Said tonight, and Rod just said he woke up at 10 o'clock in the morning. It's all good.
What the funny part is? Like, the amount of pods and episodes that I do for SGPN, I think us three are on 3 different time zones. So, we're kind of all over the place, but I'll say morning/afternoon. There we go.
Hey, this is a podcast. You can listen whenever. So it
Yeah,
could
there
be
you go.
for you. So.
Whenever and wherever it may find you, like Rod just said. So let's jump into it. Quarterbacks. I'm looking at Mr. Jackson, who was hurt last year, and I like his rushing yards. The number is 725. I know, the caveat here is that he has finished the last 2 seasons injured, right? So they probably will try to utilize his legs more. I don't know how much I believe in him as an actual passer. You go through and look at the numbers, and they're not that great, right? So it's a ton of reasons for me to like this. So I'll just start with subtraction of offensive coordinator Greg Roman, who is gone. He was, big run heavy guy, the kind of the architect of that offense. And you add Todd Monken, who loves high volume passing, right? So I think that bodes well for Lamar, being able to just probably get back and, not be on the center as much and, be in the shotgun type formation. So if the play breaks down, guess what Lamar is doing? What his instincts tell him to do, and that's going to be able to run the ball. You also just look at his recent performances. He's gone over this 725.5 projection in 4 straight seasons, and he hasn't even played a complete season in any of those. Right, last 4 years he's missed 11 games in those 4 years. We know that he had the season-ending injury last year as well. And the one thing that I liked, is also that he went over in that time. But last year he ran for 70 yards in 6 of his 12 games that he did play in. So I love that. He ranks first in rushing attempts, in rushing yards, and yards per attempt as well since becoming a starter in 2019. We just need him to stay healthy. But I'm taking Lamar over this number, over 725.5 rushing yards. And it's actually even money. Plus 100 is where you can find this over on DK.
Exactly what you mentioned there, Chris, that it's instincts for Lamar Jackson that, if his first read's not there, maybe his second read's not even there, that his instincts are going to be wanting to take off. And I think we talked about this. I don't know if it was Josh Allen or was another scrambling quarterback. Jalen Hurts, I think, was the name that we talked about as well. That their instincts are just to take off. And, we know how dynamic of a player that Lamar Jackson is when he utilizes his feet. You mentioned the offensive coordinator change, that maybe they want to open up the playbook here and for him to throw the ball a little more. But I still think that the best weapon right now for Lamar Jackson by far in his career has been utilizing his legs. And again, we go back to the year that he did win the MVP, 1,206 yards on the ground. Followed up that year with 1,005 rushing yards. Last 2 seasons, he only played in 12 games each, but 767 and 764. So if he plays one more game, or again, as much as I want to believe they are going to open up the passing game, I still believe that he's going to utilize his feet here this upcoming season, just because that's just how great of a player Lamar Jackson is. And he's been doing that for his entire career, not only at the professional level in the NFL, but also at the collegiate level where he was at Louisville. So, yeah, I like it. I can't argue against it. We talked about some of the best rushing quarterbacks in the league. The top names that come up, Lamar Jackson, number one in my eyes. We talk about Josh Allen. Jalen Hurts has entered that category as well since he became the full-time starter for the Philadelphia Eagles as well. So, yeah, no argument from me here on Lamar Jackson on his rushing yards over. Again, we've talked about it all 7 previous episodes. Health, it has been the theme of our player props here, and hopefully, at least for the sake of Baltimore Ravens fans and their future, trying to win a championship, that Lamar is able to stay healthy. Rod, thoughts on Lamar Jackson's rushing yards?
So Baltimore's always been a triple option offense. I call it the pro equivalent of a triple option offense. Those guys always are running the ball, whether it's the running backs, whether it's the quarterback. And for Lamar, he's the key of that. And his legs, where his legs go, that team goes. And so I think they need him to still be that, regardless of whether or not they're trying to sort of move their offense into a more pass-happy offense. I think they'll find that might be a little more difficult than they expect. Obviously, like Chris said, they're going to fall back on Lamar's legs, and I think that's where the yards are going to go. So I like this prop to go over too.
All right, before we get over to Rod's player prop number 1, let me tell everyone about DraftKings Sportsbook. College fans, are you ready for week 1? I believe that kicks off on Thursday night tomorrow for officially week 1 of the college football season. DraftKings Sportsbook is hooking you up with a can't-miss offer to start the season strong. This week, new customers can bet just $5 on college football and score $200 in bonus bets instantly. Anything can happen in college football. Your team can go from unranked to dynasty mode in just a couple of years. Change comes fast. The only thing that is a lock is the great offers from DraftKings Sportsbook. Life's more fun when you're in on the action. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code SGP. New customers can score $200 in bonus bets instantly when they bet just $5 on college football. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. Again, promo code SGP. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call it 1-800-GAMBLER. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Terms at sportsbook.com. Sportsbook.draftkings.slash/football terms. Boy, that's a mouthful. All right, Rod, take us over to player prop number 1 for you, my man. What do we got?
Cameron, you might want to close your ears on this one. And I'm not saying that I'm going to disrespect them, but I'm going to take an under on a Steelers player. And that is going to be Kenny Pickett. His touchdown total is at 17.5. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to take the under on this one. You get this at plus 104. I think it's over on FanDuel was where I got it. But look, we all know that the Steelers pride themselves on a running game, right? We know that over the years, it's been the bus. It's been all these fantastic runs. It's been Le'Veon Bell. Right now, it's Najee Harris. Like they want to be a smash mouth running team. Obviously, Ben Roethlisberger played a large part in that, and it's definitely the identity of their team. They're not really a pass happy team, and now Kenny Pickett loses Chase Claypool. Not to say that Claypool was this fantastic addition to that offense, but Claypool's not there anymore. Now he's throwing to Deontay Johnson, George Pickett, Allen Robinson. All these guys are great receivers in and of their own right, but I don't think any of these guys are huge touchdown machines, right? And thanks, Cameron. I'm glad you don't hate this one for sure. But also, if you go back through it, since 2018, even Ben Roethlisberger has only thrown over 17.5 touchdowns once in that span, and that was in 2020. Hold on, let me make sure I got my tab right. That was in 2020, yes, when he threw for 33 touchdowns on the season. Since then, they've only combined really. I'm sorry, Ben Roethlisberger did it twice. He did it last year, or the last year he was in, but he only threw for 22. So as a team, they've barely tossed for more than 17.5. 2018, as a team, they threw for 17. Ben Roethlisberger threw 16, and then Joshua Dobbs threw a touchdown in there as well. In 2019, Mason Rudolph threw 9. Devlin Hodges, stuttering's contagious, threw 8. So again, they're not that much of a touchdown throwing team. And I just, like I said, I think that the touchdowns are going to come from the ground. Pickett is good, but he's in an offense that doesn't throw very many touchdown passes. So give me the under 17.5 at plus 104 for Kenny Pickett and his total touchdowns.
I think for the Steelers this year, their success is going to be on the shoulders of obviously Kenny Pickett. And again, we saw he looked great in the preseason, right? There's no question about it now. I think the question now becomes for Kenny Pickett and the Steelers' offense is going to be if he's able to take that next step. And we talked about that second-year leap that a lot of these rookie quarterbacks take, right? And I think for the Steelers, I mean, they've been a very successful organization for decades and decades, right? I mean, we talk about, like you mentioned, all the way going back to Jerome Bettis, the time they have with Ben Roethlisberger, and the running game has had so many great running backs for this team, and that continues as well with Najee Harris out of Alabama that they drafted a couple seasons ago. So, but now with Kenny Pickett coming in, a local guy, he went to Pitt, for college. We saw flashes of him last season, especially at the tail end of the year. And if you kind of go back and look at his stats, I think he only threw 1 interception in the final. I want to go back and look here real quick because I do have his information up right now. So the final, let's see, I think it was like 8 games or something like that. He threw 1 interception. Yeah. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. And then, but prior to that, he had 8 interceptions in those first 5 starts that he made. So we already saw the progression from Kenny Pickett in that back half of the season. Now he's had a full off season to, learn the playbook, have a full mini camp preseason with the Steelers. I think you're right, Rod, that number one, that the touchdowns will probably come from the running backs. I agree with Cam that he is mentioning that he like his passing yards to go over this season. I think that he's going to have a good season throwing the football. And I'll save one of my picks for the Steelers later when we get to the skill positions here. So, yeah, agreement about Kenny Pickett on the under on his touchdowns here. Chris, thoughts on Kenny Pickett for the upcoming season?
Yeah, it's a lot of things you guys mentioned already, so I won't regurgitate those. But I think the biggest thing that sticks out to me is just, like Rob mentioned, the wide receiving core, right? Like these guys aren't going to blow you away by any stretch of the imagination, right? And you know, is Tomlin still there? Yes. So are they still going to be that smash mouth running team that Rod talked about? And the answer is yes. So you look for them to be in low scoring smash mouth type games with not the most offense, right? This isn't like the sexiest team, but they typically get the job done. We know what Tomlin has done, since he's been there in his tenure. So I think we continue to see a lot of that. And there also still could be, some growing pains for him as well. I think he came in like week 4 at halftime last year. Yeah. So it's still going to be some, still could be a learning curve. He also got, different receivers. They bought over a couple guys. So I would agree. Number just a tad bit too high for me to take the over. So that means I can only look towards the under, like Rod said.
All right. He only threw for 7 touchdowns last season at all in 13 games. So you're asking him to get a lot more, double that and then some in his second year. That's a little tough.
All right, for my first player prop, I also will go back to Lamar Jackson. I'll take an under here as well. I'm going to take the under on his passing yards. This number comes in, I think I saw a 3,450. Let me double check here because I think that was on DK as well. Lamar Jackson passing yards. Let's see here. So 3,450 and a half passing yards over at DraftKings right now. It's at minus 110. So I know we talked a lot about it when, Chris gave out the over on his rushing yards, but I need to see it before I can believe it that he's number one going to be a successful passer in this league. And I know we talked about the offensive coordinator change, right? But I think another thing I'm really not sold on is the wide receiving group for this Baltimore Ravens team, right? You brought in OBJ. He's 34 years old. He's coming off the ACL. I know he missed the entire last season to recover and make his return back into the NFL now with the Baltimore Ravens. The more reliable for this team has been Mark Andrews, right? He's been solid. He's been probably the security blanket, if not the first go-to guy for Lamar Jackson when we talk about the passing game. Rashad Bateman also coming off a season injury last year. Zay Flowers we've seen flashes of him through training camp and in the preseason. But for Lamar Jackson to go out and essentially throw 3,500 passing yards, that would have to be the most in his career that he's done this in 5 seasons that he's been in the NFL. The most that he's thrown has been 3,127, which was back in the 2019 season, which I believe that's when he won the MVP for the Baltimore Ravens. In one season, he's only gone over 3,000 passing yards, which was that 2019 season. And we talked about last season, the past 2 seasons, he's dealt with injury and he's missed the final 5 games of the regular season. So for me, again, it's going to be a wait and see approach. If this passing game does have a lot of success, I'm a little bit skeptical. Maybe it's something that at least in the first season with a coordinator change, that it may take some time for them to, I guess, find that chemistry, because you're going through what was a offense that was centered around Lamar Jackson's skill set, which was running the football and utilizing his legs. And now you're going to, have him, like Chris mentioned, go back in the shotgun and try to throw the ball down the field. So asking him to do 3,500 passing yards for me when he hasn't done in his career and in a new offensive system with, I don't believe that our above average receiving group, I'm going to take the under on Lamar Jackson here. Rod, what do you think about his passing yards for this upcoming season?
I mean, you nailed it right there. How you expect somebody to do something that they haven't done in their entire career before the only number 1 receiver you have is Odell Beckham Jr. And I'm sorry, but over the last few seasons, we haven't seen that same guy that made that one-handed grab that told everybody that he was the best receiver in the league. That doesn't happen, right? Yeah. And in 2019, again, this was a team that he carried on his back as well. And they sort of, I guess, outperformed what they were supposed to. You look at his receiving core then, he had guys like Mark Andrews, like you said, Marquise Brown, Hayden Hurst, Willie Snead. It wasn't a very good team in 2019 either, but I feel like this might even be a worse situation for him just because these guys haven't played together before, and this is going to be a new system trying to get him to do something. That's just an obscene number. I definitely smash that under.
Chris, thoughts on Lamar Jackson passing yards?
Yep, I'm just in agreement with you guys. So like kind of like what Rob was mentioning, and you mentioned this as well. You know, if you're asking somebody that's coming off injury to do something they've never done before, right? This goes back to what Rob was saying about Pickett as well, right? Like they just in Pittsburgh, quarterbacks just don't pass for that many. So you're asking a player on a team in a system that hasn't changed to do something that you haven't done. And we always talk about like that first year, right? Like what that first year kind of looks like. So you're asking him to do something he's never done before. You're asking him to stay healthy because he has to stay healthy and able to do that as well. And there's new offensive coordinators, new wide receivers. Yeah, it's just the number is just a tad, not even a tad bit, honestly. It's completely too high now that you paint that picture. So I'll be looking towards under as well, 34.50 and a half. And it's not a lot of juice. Minus 110 right now. I love it.
All right, before we get over to our second round of player props here for the AFC North division, let me tell everyone about Underdog Fantasy. August is almost over. We have 2 days left. You know what that means? Time is running out for you to draft your fantasy football team on Underdog Fantasy. Get championship ready for your home league by trying out Best Ball on Underdog Fantasy. All you have to do is do one live snake draft, no waivers, no trades. You set it, forget it, and Underdog does the rest of the work. Try it out with Underdog's Best Ball Mania tournament, the largest fantasy football contest of all time with $15 million of total prizes up for grabs, including an absurd $3 million going to the winner. Do you have what it takes to win it all? The time is now. The last day to draft your draft your fantasy football team is September 7th. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store and sign up with promo code SGPN. To get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Again, that's Underdog Fantasy, promo code SGPN. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Also, make sure to check out the SGP Patreon. Sign up for the Patreon to get access to exclusive contests, including the NFL Win Totals contest with a $1,000 first place prize. This week's Patreon pick'em is all week one college football. The Patreon is a great way to support the network and fight back against corporate gambling. To get all the details, go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. Again, that's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/PATREON, Patreon. All right, gentlemen, let's get over to round 2 of our player props for the AFC North. Rod, lead us off, my man.
All right, let's go back to that triple option offense in Baltimore. I'm going to take J.K. Dobbins. I will probably never stop taking draft picks on him or fantasy. I just love J.K. Dobbins. I wish that he would be able to stay healthy. I wish that he would be able to play every single game. The man is a beast when he's out there, and I like his rushing total over, and it's 750 and a half. You can find this at plus 100. It is even money. And over 750 and a half. We talked about Lamar. We talked about how he's going to get his, but last season, this team rushed for 2,720 total yards. That is intense, right? That's a lot of rushing yards to go around. Plus, they had guys like Kenyon Drake on the team that was actually getting some run, right? 109 attempts rather. He's out. No more Kenyon Drake. So that leaves Gus Edwards, the bus. That leaves Justice Hill, right? And those guys aren't necessarily going to, I think, take chunks out of J.K. Dobbins' workload in that J.K. Dobbins is the guy. And if he can stay healthy, he's going to be that guy. Justice Hill had 49 carries last season, 262 yards. Gus Edwards, 87. Gus Edwards was more of that change of pace, short yardage type of a guy. That's what they're bringing him in for. But for J.K. Dobbins last season, 520 yards in 8 games. The dude is averaging close to 6 yards a carry in his career. 5.9 yards per carry. That is insane. In his first year, right, he had 134 attempts and still averaged 6 yards a carry on 134 attempts rather, 805 yards in that season as well. We know that this is a running team still. We know that and then I think this number is mainly because, one, they don't think he's going to stay healthy all season long, and two, they think Lamar's going to throw the ball. Well, joke's on them. He is, but J.K. Dobbins at 5.9 yards per carry is still going to get a decent amount of run. Like I said, Kenyon Drake is gone. Those 109 carries up for grabs there for J.K. Dobbins. So 750 and a half at even money, take it. Just take it and run.
I mean, the key right there is what you mentioned. The yards per carry is what jumps off the page when you look at J.K. Dobbins' stats, right? Close to 6 yards per carry. Last season, if he was able to stay healthy, he would have surpassed 1,000 yards easily. Probably would have done it another 3-4 games for the Baltimore Ravens. But also what you talked about, the depth chart for this Ravens backfield is now pretty much J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. And we talk about Lamar Jackson as well. Kind of something similar to the Philadelphia Eagles, where you have a running quarterback, but they have a very big logjam in that running back group. But with the Ravens, at least, it's J.K. Dobbins, it's Gus Edwards, and it's obviously your quarterback, Lamar Jackson. So, again, if he's able to stay healthy, even if he plays 10 games or 11 games, something in that 10-12 neighborhood, I think that 12, that's the key game, that if he plays 12 games, he's going to get over this number for sure. Chris, thoughts on J.K. Dobbins for this upcoming season?
Yeah, he was actually honorable mention for me for a lot of the reasons that Rob said. He didn't make the list for me, but if he was the next one. I know we only doing 3, and I looked at some of the same exact things that Rob said. I think that they're going to continue to run the ball. You want to take some of that pressure off Lamar as much as possible as well, right? And you talked about it, Munaf, when you broke down why you don't like Lamar Jackson to go over his passing yards. Is because that wide receiving core hasn't really proven itself and is aging, right? We're talking about Odell Beckham Jr. coming back after the injury. I think Rob mentioned that he's 34 years old already. So you're going to have to rely. This one goes really, really, I think it's, the caveat is what I said about Lamar Jackson going over his rushing yards is that you just need him to stay healthy because, JK has been, pretty unfortunate, having health, just different things kind of come up. So I would only be looking to play the over on this one as well. Super small number. Like Rod said, I smashed that.
All right, Chris, take us over to player prop number 2, my man. What do you got?
So I see I see Always Fresh, Never Soggy in the comment section. He says, any value on Faden Chubb as the division rush leader? I'm not going to answer that, but I will say that Nick Chubb, I am taking his over on his 1,200 rushing yards, right? So Deshaun Watson's coming back, of course, and he's supposed to be Houston Texans Deshaun Watson, but I think Chubb will still get like his fair share of carries, and that's what's scary about this potential offense if they can get Deshaun Watson back to that form, right? So I think I'm not sure what Deshaun will be, but I know who Nick Chubb will be, right? And I think he goes over this number, minus 112 over on FanDuel. Kareem Hunt, kind of what Rob was mentioning, running back leaving, that's 123 carries. He's now in New Orleans playing for the Saints. So he's not, necessarily splitting carries. And Chubb was by far the better of the two as well. Kareem ran for 123 yards, 123 carries last year, but just 3.8 yards per carry. He finished with under 500 yards, 468. And you look at Chubb, 302 carries. This dude averages 5.1 yards per carry and rushed for 15.25 last season. So we, of course, that's 123 that he probably won't get all of them, of course, right? But that's more carries for him. And the big competition in the backfield is Jerome Ford, a guy that saw just 8 touches last year. So I'm not sure how to distribute that. And you just also, you just kind of look at his history. He's rushed for at least 1,201 yards in back-to-back seasons, 3 of his last 4. And what's more impressive is the yards after contact, 5.3 yards per carry over his 5-year career. This guy has never rushed for under, and that's probably knock on wood, but he's never rushed for under under 5 yards per carry over the course of a season. So I looked at his yards per carry after contact. 1,050 yards after contact last year. So to me, it kind of solidifies who he is as a person. He's a big, powerful running back. It's hard to bring him down. Defenses don't try to as much. Well, they try to, but it's not that successful. And then you just go back and you look, since the 2018 season when he kind of started taking over, he's third in carries, he's second in rushing yards, he's third in rushing yards per game, and the Browns are projected to have one of the better offensive lines in the NFL this season. So I think that they continue to rely on Chubb a lot this year, even though Deshaun is back. And like I said, we are not 100% sure what version. Even if we get the best version, that just means his offense is going to be even better than what we're anticipating. So give me Nick Chubb over the 1,200.5 rushing yards, minus 112 over on FanDuel.
I mean, I can't argue against it. Nick Chubb has just been an absolute monster ever since he got drafted into the NFL, right? I mean, last season you mentioned 5 yards per carry, 302 yards, 1,500 plus rushing yards for Nick Chubb. Going back to last season, 1,259 yards, and he's averaging 5.2 yards per carry, and he's been at a minimum 5 yards per carry in every single season that he's played for the Cleveland Browns in his 5 years. And again, when we talk about if Deshaun Watson is going to struggle this upcoming season for the Cleveland Browns, just because, again, last season, I'm not going to put a lot of stock into what happened with Deshaun Watson because he missed over a year plus with all the stuff that was happening off the field with him and with the stuff that went down with the Texans and him not wanting to be there or whatever. But now another suspension as well, right? So now he's had that full off season, but I'm still not sure I can get behind Deshaun Watson. But it only leads you to Mr. Reliable, which has been your success, has been Nick Chubb. And I think that, again, he should be primed to have another big year for the Cleveland Browns offense here, Rod.
Yeah, and Cameron adding was Chubb only Chubb because of Hunt, though. Nah, I think that's Chubb is Chubb because he's Chubb, and I agree with Always Fresh. Nah, dude is Derrick Henry 2.0. I don't know if I'd crown him that, but he's definitely a damn good running back for sure in and of his own right. I think he's Nick Chubb 1.0. If we're being honest here. So, and I've got more to add about him because I've actually agree with Chris on this one as well. I found another route to go on that rushing total as well. So, yeah, I mean, look, for Deshaun Watson's purposes, there are people that you think are going to bounce back from their diversity and be good. He seems to be a guy that never seems to bounce back from his diversity. He's always a guy that digs himself a deeper hole. And unfortunately, I don't know that he's even going to last through this season on the Browns. So that just makes Chubb that much more valuable.
Well, I mean, that just leads us right perfectly into my next player prop. And that is what we call in this profession a transition. Deshaun Watson under 3,700.5 passing yards. And so again, it's a great segue into what we just mentioned about Deshaun Watson. And again, number one, I'm not exactly really sure on the skill position players, at least at the wide receiving group for this Cleveland Browns team. They're ranked number 18 as far as a positional unit group is their wide receiver position coming into this season. Amari Cooper, as much as the slack he got when he was with the Dallas Cowboys, this guy is out there and he plays games. But I after that, for me, I think it's more that I'm not sure what I'm going to get out of Deshaun Watson this upcoming season. And asking him to come out and throw for nearly 3,800 yards, I think that's going to be a tall order. Again, you look at this division; it's going to be a dogfight in every single one of those games. Just because I think that number one, whoever has the winning record in this division is going to win this division. Outside of those 11 games that they do play outside of the division. Unfortunately for this division, I believe they do play the AFC South this upcoming season as their games outside of the division. But for Deshaun Watson, I think that there is going to be, I guess, growing pains within the Cleveland Browns offense. And it kind of, goes right back to what we talked about with Nick Chubb, that if things aren't going well or things are going well with Nick Chubb, why get away from it? Keep fitting the guy the ball. He gets you 5 yards per carry. You give him the hand on the ball off on first down. He's getting you 5 yards. You're setting yourself up in second 5. That's a great success, at least in first down efficiency when we talk about a guy like Nick Chubb. So, Watson could get into the realm of 3,300, 3,400, 3,500 yards, even 3,600 yards, but asking him to get over 3,700 passing yards, currently over at DK, I think that's going to be a tall order for him, at least in his first full season with the Cleveland Browns. Rod, anything else to add about Deshaun Watson? No, we just talked about him in volumes.
Well, I mean, think about it too. Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, DJP, like those, that's who he's throwing to. And yeah, Cooper has the opportunity to get 1,100 yards maybe 1,200 yards, but expecting like Elijah Moore and DPJ to have another couple of thousand yards themselves, I don't think that's happening. I think you're right. I think he's closer to the 3,000 range, maybe 3,200, but definitely not 37. That's such a high number for a guy that, again, we don't know what to expect out of him this season.
Chris, anything else for Deshaun Watson?
No, you guys. I think my biggest thing, was the unknown, right? If I'm unknown about something, I'm automatically leaning towards under, right? Because I gotta have confidence to feel like I'm gonna take it over. And we talked about this in numerous podcasts so far when we were breaking down these divisions. And the other thing is just the wide receiving core, right? Like how good are they going to be? Then you can also lean on Nick Chubb, like you said, So I won't regurgitate everything you said, but all of those things would kind of lead me towards the under as well. And there's the possibility that a guy like Deshaun Watson blows us all away, right? He comes out here and throws for 4,000, 4,200. But to me, that would kind of correlate with Nick Chubb not being that great. And, who of these wide receivers did all of us miss on if he's throwing for that many yards, right? Like, is Amari Cooper turning into Calvin Johnson of Detroit, the Detroit Lion days? So yeah, I don't think so. So I would lean towards the under as well.
All right, let's get over to our last round of player props. Rod, lead us off.
I love that Always Fresh says, don't forget about Njoku. Yeah, you're right. We can't forget about him. I'm going to piggyback off of Chris's Nick Chubb stat. I found on FanDuel where you can get Nick Chubb to have 1,250 or more regular season rushing yards at plus 110. So you can kick this up to plus money. And this is just sort of a way to take the over. I mean, look, his over on this is what, about 1,200 yards. If you think he can get 1,200 yards, I think he can get to at least 1,251. And just like Chris said, he's been a beast since he's joined. Last year, 1,525. The year before that, 1,259. He cleared this by 9 yards. The only seasons in which he hasn't done it is the 2020 season where he didn't play a full schedule and his rookie season where he got 996. Since then, 3 out of the 5 have been over this mark. We think he's going to be relied on very heavily. And like I said, if he can get to 1,200, he can get to 1,250 quite easily. 1,251 really is. Well, actually, no, for this one, you just need 1,250 and you get plus 110 out of it. So like I said, I like it. I liked his over. So I went digging a little bit to try to find a better way to get you invested in his over. This is a much better way to take the over on his 12 and what is it? 1,205, I think it is.
Oh, 1,205, yeah.
Yeah, 1,205. Take that one for sure, too, because that one's definitely going to cash. But double down on this one as well to get yourself some plus money at 1,250 because, like I said, and like Chris said, this is going to be Nick Chubb's team, I think, and he's going to need to be – and I think he is going to be the leading rusher in the division because I'm not sure that Najee's going to get there to over 1,200 yards. We know that none of the Ravens are going to go over 1,200 yards by themselves. Maybe as a team, yes. But yeah, I don't know that Mixon's going to get there 12 either. So yeah, I think this is Chubb's rushing division. I think he gets to 1,250, and I think you can get plus money out of that.
250 carries is the golden number for Nick Chubb if he's going to average 5 yards per carry as he has in his first 5 seasons in the NFL. So if you want some plus odds, again, get over to FanDuel. They have that plus 110 for Nick Chubb to get to that mark. Chris, take us over to your last player problem, man. What do we got?
So let's go back to Baltimore. And I know none of us are really high on Lamar Jackson throwing the ball. Like I said, I like him rushing. But I do like Mark Andrews. If there's a receiver that I really, really like, and of course he doesn't play receiver, but he'll be catching the ball at tight end, it's him, right? So Mark Andrews over the lowest I could find best number I could find, 800.5 receiving yards, minus 112 over on FanDuel. Back-to-back seasons, this guy has gone over this 840 yards receiving. In 3 of the last 4 as well. He's still relatively young, only 27 years old, so I think he has a little left in the tank so that he could, do this again this year. Last year, he missed 2 games due to the shoulder injury. And he only played 9 games with Lamar Jackson before Lamar actually went down for that injury and missed the rest of the season as well. So, all of that sets up really, really well. Hopefully those guys can, get more time together. So I really love that aspect. So he gets Lamar back. And so number wise, this is what that kind of looked like. Weeks 1 through 6 last year, he had a 33% target share, and he turned that into just under 76 yards per game. And 76 yards per game is going to blow this number out of the water. Just FYI. In weeks 7 through 16, so some of those weeks when Lamar wasn't there, he saw just 23% target shares. He finished with just 36.5 yards per game. And we don't even need him to average the 76. If he can just give us 50 yards per game over a 17 game stretch, that's going to get us 850, and we'll clear this number by 50 yards, right? As weird as it may sound last season, he still ranked because he missed that shoulder injury because Lamar wasn't there the whole time. He still ranked top 3 in targets for tight end for tight ends, receptions, receiving yards, and tight ends. In all of those tight ends amongst since 2019 as well. So he is one of the more elite tight ends that we have in our league. I think the additions of older Odell Beckham Jr., like we kind of talked about, to stretch the field actually help. Same thing with Zay Flowers. I don't think that is going to cut into his usage. Lamar Jackson loves his tight end. This is a security blanket like we've been talking about on previous podcasts as well. What I absolutely love about this is that he cleared the number last year while missing 2 games. Didn't have his quarterback, and he had 113 targets, which ranks second behind only, guess who? Travis Kelce, of course, right? So yeah. And then if Baltimore's offense turns into what we think it'll be with Todd Monken, with Greg Roman out, then it will be a little bit more pass heavy. And I think if I'm taking anybody on that team to go over, it'll be Mark Andrews, and I'm not looking at those other wide receivers.
I mean, when we talk about security blankets for teams, Mark Andrews, I think, is at the top of that list for the Baltimore Ravens because he's been one of the more consistent guys ever since at least Lamar took over as a starting quarterback. But you take a look back-to-back seasons, 110 plus targets. Like you mentioned, all the stats are about the target share. He's crushed this number. And you also talk about, when we talk about tight ends as well, I feel like Mark Andrews is forgotten a lot. Because again, we talk about the Travis Kelce of the world, we talk about the George Kittles of the world. When we talked about Darren Wallers of the world a couple of seasons ago, I think he probably returns to that form this upcoming season for the Giants. But I feel like Mark Andrews is sometimes forgotten about in that fold, and he's been, like I mentioned, more reliable than not for the Baltimore Ravens here. Rod, thoughts on Mark Andrews?
Yeah, these guys have been together since they both joined the league in 2018, right? They're been teammates since then. They've grown to love each other. And the only time that Mark Andrews has not been the leading receiver on this team in yardage wise has been the 2020 season where Marquise Brown stole that crown from Andrews. But of course, Andrews didn't even play all the games in that one. Marquise did, and still he was only 68 yards away. Or 69 yards away, really, from being the leading receiver on that team. Again, Mark Andrews is the pass catcher. Doesn't matter who else is in there. Could be OBJ, could be DPJ. I don't care. It doesn't matter who it is, right? Those are the people. He's the guy that's going to be catching the passes. So it stands to reason he's going to be in line for at least 900, if not 1,000 yards again this season.
All right. For my last player prop, I am going to go back to the Steelers. I'm going to take George Pickens to go over on his receiving yards for this upcoming season. I'm buying into all the hype for George Pickens for this upcoming season for the Steelers. And again, we've seen all the flashes during the training camp, and we've seen, the preseason from George Pickens. You go back to last year in his rookie year, right? I think he got to the number of, I want to say it was around 700, if I'm not mistaken, when I wrote this down. So it was 801 yards last season. And for this upcoming season, that number right now is the same thing at 800.5. I think that he's going to be more involved in this passing game because we take a look at the depth chart for the Pittsburgh Steelers for this upcoming season. It's Deontay Johnson. It's George Pickens. We talked about Chase Claypool, who's no longer on this team. There was a lot of hype coming behind Chase Claypool this upcoming, when he entered the NFL, but obviously it didn't work out with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now it's going to be, I think George Pickens is going to be at the top of that list as far as targets for this team. Allen Robinson, I mean, I think we talked about him a lot last season, Rod, that he would have been a great addition when he was with the Rams, but it just didn't pan out. Maybe his better days are behind him. So I think this is just going to be a year where George Pickens has a monster year. And I wouldn't be surprised, guys, that George Pickens has a 1,000-yard receiving season. We talked about that we do like Kenny Pickett to go over on his passing yards for this upcoming year. I think a lot of that is going to go to George Pickens. And I think that those targets that we talk about, I think that he's definitely going to be at the top of that list. He should get 100-plus targets this upcoming season. Last year, 52 receptions, 84 targets, 801 receiving yards. The official number right now is 750.5 over on DraftKings. I'm going to double check that number because every other book has 800.5. So if we're finding a 50 yards discount here on George Pickens at DraftKings, I think that's something that I may just put like 2 units on because I think this is going to be a prime year for George Pickens. And yes, right now, currently over on DraftKings, 750.5 is a little bit juiced at minus 125. But again, if he plays in 14, 15 games this season, the targets should be up for him. I think he's going to crush this number for this upcoming year. So George Pickens over 750.5 receiving yards for the Pittsburgh Steelers here, Chris.
Yeah, I like it. Munaf. So last year, being his first year, he is going to be a little more acclimated to the NFL, right? That's one thing I'm always looking for. So I love that. And I just think that they're going to have to pass the ball, right? A little bit more because with Pittsburgh, you don't want to be too predictable. And Mike Tomlin's done a really good job of this over the course of his tenure there, right? Even when they had, I think Rob mentioned them earlier, Jerome Bettis, Le'Veon Bell, you still want to, and we'll see it. I think we'll continue to see it for as long as Mike Tomlin's in the NFL. A lot of play action, right? A lot of wide receivers running down the field and being able to find, run different routes to make some of those highlight reel catches, which we saw Pickens do a lot last year. So I like him. I think that like I said, it should be some progression. He was very he went over this number last year, so I think we still see him continue to get a little bit better this year. And also quarterback position, another year, right, for him. So just developing that cohesiveness over the course of the offseason, I like it.
Rod, thoughts on George Pickens?
So Deontay Johnson obviously is the big guy in the room, but they've had their frustrations with him over the last couple of seasons, right? I mean, the drops, the just not necessarily consistent play out of Deontay Johnson. He could be great one day, and then he can just drop a whole bunch the next day. So I think as this team progresses, they're going to need to land on the second year guy to kind of step up and be the man. So I definitely agree with you on this over for sure.
All right, so that is our last round of player props for the AFC North division. Last order of business before we wrap up the episode, that is going to be our best bets for the AFC North division. Rod, why don't you lead us off with your best bet for this division?
Just give me the guy I can't quit. J.K. Dobbins, over 750.5 rushing yards. Again, this is at even money. It literally is the triple option. And I'm probably going to say that all season long. You're going to get tired of hearing it. I don't care. That's what they run in Baltimore. So they may want to pass. They may want to be flashy. But JK, if he's healthy, I think he's going to get close to 1,000 yards. So this 750 yards is gone. So I love it.
All right. Chris, best bet.
So let's stay in Baltimore. Let's stay with the Russian. I'm going Lamar. Another guy. Like, these numbers all kind of correlate because none of them are too high. Like Rod said, we got 2 guys coming off an injury. Lamar also coming off injury. Rushing yards at 725.5. I think that he goes over that number. He has, in the past, and we just need him to stay healthy. Kind of like what Rod was saying. The one consistent thing has been Lamar Jackson's legs for this team. Not the greatest receiving core. Plays will break down. Instincts will kick in. And we'll see him flying down the field, breaking off 25-yard runs, 50-yard runs. And I think he can go over this number relatively early in the season too, if he can play, a full allotment of games this year.
All right, for my best bet, it's going to be the one I just mentioned, George Pickens, over 750.5 receiving yards for this upcoming season. And we talked about last season, he got 801 receiving yards on 83 targets, I believe is what I said. But I think that number is going to definitely get into the triple digits as far as targets for this upcoming season for George Pickens. 52 receptions last year, 4 touchdowns as well. I think he's just going to be heavily more involved in this offense. Probably may at a point may just become the number one option for the Steelers team because, again, we talked about Deontay Johnson and his inefficiencies and his inconsistencies. George Pickens could probably, be that number one guy. And again, we talked about Kenny Pickett taking that next step this upcoming season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He had a great, phenomenal final 8 games for the Pittsburgh Steelers, something that he carried into the offseason, into training camps, into the preseason game. And I think that him and George Pickens should have a big year, at least offensively, throwing the football for this Steelers team. And again, we talked about the running game, that's going to be there as well. But I think for the success for the Steelers team, at least offensively, is going to be obviously on the shoulders of Kenny Pickett. But I think he's going to find George Pickens. So we may hear Pickett to Pickens a lot as far as maybe touchdowns, but more importantly, receiving yards for this upcoming season. Gentlemen, 8 divisions down. We are officially at the finish line for our season-long player props. This is a great reminder for our listeners. If you haven't already, go back and listen to all 8 or the previous 7 divisions. And this one, of course, if you're already listening to it. There were really around 40 to 45 minutes, so you can knock them out, whether you're driving into work, driving home from work, going to work out, trying to tune out the kids or the wife or your partner, whoever the case might be. But hopefully we found some more winners for this upcoming season for you guys. This was a lot of fun. I look forward to this every single season, doing our season-long player props. But that doesn't mean we're going anywhere. We're just warming up for the regular season. We'll be doing our weekly NFL player props for the Sunday games. We'll be doing our player props for the prime time games, the Thursday night football and Monday night football. So it's a great reminder. If you haven't already subscribed to number 1, the Propcast, this is a great time to do so. And also the NFL Gambling Podcast, if you haven't already. The props that we do give out weekly will also be on the NFL Gambling Podcast feed. So do us a favor, subscribe to both of those feeds. If you haven't already, left us a rating and review for both of those feeds or any of the SGPN feeds and podcasts that are happening. Please take some time out and do so. It really helps us grow the show and grow up the charts and be one of the best pods out there. Rod, anything else, my man, we need to mention before we get out of here?
I think it's funny. None of us brought up any Bengals. That's
yeah.
Little bit surprising given who's on that team, but that's fine. I think we still found some good. And also, I'm looking forward to a season of broadcasters tripping over Pickens to Pickens, Pickett's to Pickett. I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be fun too.
P2P.
Pickens to Pickens. I don't know. Anyways, follow me on Twitter at RJ Villagomez. Link in the bio. Obviously, NASCAR still hot and heavy. F1 is back. IndyCar. We got a green light to go IndyCar again this weekend. So lots of motor racing for you guys to have if you're looking for something different from the NFL.
Chris, anything else, my man?
What Rod mentioned, the picking to Pickens, I think they'll just start abbreviating that, Rod. I think we'll have a universal P2P, like you said, or something like that. It will be super interesting. And then what Rod mentioned about the Bengals, man, like I feel like so much of last season will be like really close to who, like nothing really turned over. They have like pretty much everything's the same. So the numbers are, seem pretty sharp. So didn't really surprise me. I thought maybe one of you guys would, but I was looking at this like, nah, I'm not touching any of this. So, that really didn't surprise me too much. As far as, where you can find my work over on Twitter as well at Crispy Cap and 2 P's, 2 N's. Excited to continue, doing the show with you guys and kind of breaking down NFL props throughout the regular season. I'm really excited about that. So hopefully we've given out some winners. Like Munaf said, if you haven't checked out the other pods, we've broken down every division at this point, and we're really, really close to football. We're all really, really excited. And, I'm just excited to kind of keep it going, so definitely check out the other pods and, listen to this one too. Again, if you need some more information.
Yeah, just going back to the Bengals, but I think for me, when I was looking at it, it was just the unknown of what was going to happen with Joe Burrow. I think that kind of, steered me away. And then I think with the numbers for Joe Mixon, I was looking at, I just didn't find anything that kind of gave me the edge or something that I did like. So again, we'll see what happens with Joe Burrow if he's able to start the season or if they hold him out for the Cincinnati Bengals. But maybe we'll come back next week. Maybe do some player award markets. I know we did that for the NFL pod. Maybe we could quickly run through those before we do get to the regular season and do our first official regular season pod for the Thursday night football game between the Lions and the Chiefs. All right, that is going to do it. You can find me on Twitter at SportsNerd824. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off and let it ride.